Hey everyone, it's Tyler. It's Sunday afternoon and I've been doing some trip planning today, and I'm going to do some food prep to get into the dehydrator for some upcoming canoe trips. A couple meals I'm going to be prepping for is backcountry poutine and some rice pilaf to go with some fresh caught fish. I'm going to make rice pilaf and I'm going to make a poutine sauce. Then I'm going to put them in the dehydrator, and once they're dried and dehydrated, I'm going to show how I pack these meals to go on the backcountry trips. I'm going to dice up some peppers. When making dehydrated meals, it's really important to try to keep a lot of your ingredients around the same size, and judging density of certain ingredients so that you can try to get everything to rehydrate at the same rate. If you have big honking pieces of peppers and little pieces of onion and little pieces of rice, you're gonna have to you're gonna be spending extra time boiling to try to get the peppers rehydrated, and the rice might be rehydrated and the onions might be rehydrated. So trying to make everything relatively the same size is kind of a key to success. So in my rice pilaf, I'm going to use red pepper, garlic, and red onion. A little bit of chicken stock and some plain Uncle Ben's rice. I'm actually going to take a cry break. Those red onions are strong. Stronger than me. We're going to start with a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the Dutch oven that I'm using. I don't want to add too much because fat really doesn't dehydrate very well at all. So this is just to keep the, just to help with the sauteing process with these vegetables that I've cut up. I'm going to add them in. I'm on high heat for now, but I'll probably drop it down to a bit of a lower heat once it starts sauteing. I'm just going to keep this moving and get them sweating down. I'm going to add some salt now. I have this chicken stock that I pulled out of the freezer earlier, and I got it on some heat. And it's chicken stock from some braised chicken that I made a while ago. And I braised the chicken with smoked paprika. So it is going to be flavored with a bit of smoked paprika. That's okay because it's going to match all the other flavors. And you got to use up what's in your freezer. And make do with what you have. I'm just gonna taste this, See how much salt is already in the stock, just so I don't over-season my pilaf. Smoked paprika. The peppers, onions, and garlic are sweating up nice. Starting to get nice and soft. I don't need to brown them. I want to keep them nice and bright and vibrant. So just a nice soft saute. Okay, I think I'm at the point of where I can add my rice. The vegetables are nice and sweated off. Sweated off? Is that right? Vegetables are cooking down nice. So I'm gonna add 2 cups of rice to my peppers, onions, and garlic. And then I'm going to add 4 cups of stock. Okay, 4 cups of liquid in. Give it a good stir. I'm going to bring this to a simmer. And some fresh thyme. This is going to go in the oven at 350 for 30 minutes or so. Nice gentle cook in the Dutch oven. Okay, we're at a simmer now. Just nice gentle bubbles coming up. We can throw the lid on and throw it in the oven. Okay, so we have 5 cups of chicken stock left over. Again, it's the chicken stock with the smoked paprika in it, so it does have a little bit of smoked paprika flavor. We're just gonna make some, or test out really, a backcountry gravy recipe that we can dehydrate. I've never done gravy before in the dehydrator, so this is new for me. But it'll be really cool if I could have some gravy, powdered gravy. We can make some poutine, bring some potatoes and some cheese and make a poutine on a camping trip. So we're gonna start with the 5 cups of stock, and we're gonna just turn that onto the heat, and then I'm gonna measure out some cornstarch. When I usually make gravy, I would start with a roux. So it would be equal parts butter and flour, thicken the sauce, and then that would be your gravy. But because fat doesn't dehydrate very well, I want to try to do this without using any fat at all. So I am going to use cornstarch, which is usually not my go-to for making gravy, but we'll see how it turns out. I'm going to add 2.5 tablespoons of cornstarch to this bowl, roughly. Kind of go from there. We might have to add a little bit more, but we'll see. I'm gonna add equal parts cold water to the cornstarch to make my slurry. This is to make sure that when we add the cornstarch to the gravy, it doesn't lump, because cornstarch can lump when you add it to hot liquids. I'm gonna add a bit of Worcestershire. Like I said earlier, I'm making a poutine sauce, which isn't necessarily just gravy. Traditional poutine sauce would have ketchup, usually, maybe a little bit of mustard, and some Worcestershire. The smoked paprika is already gonna be pretty strong in the chicken stock, so I'm just gonna add a good amount of Worcestershire just for good flavor. Coming up to heat, I'm just gonna add a little bit of the stock to the slurry and slowly whisk it in, and then I'll add the whole thing back into the stock. When using cornstarch, we want to make sure we cook it out for 4 or 5 minutes at least, just to get rid of some of that cornstarch flavor. It's not the most pleasant flavor. Like I said, using cornstarch isn't my go-to for gravy, but for this application, I think it's the best option. Just gonna slowly whisk it in now. We're gonna let that get up to temperature, cook it out for 3 or 4 minutes, and see if it thickens up enough. We might have to add a bit more if it doesn't thicken up quite enough. We're gonna taste test it before I finish it off just to make sure there's enough salt. We want it to be nice and thick so it coats those nice fried cheesy potatoes. Just gonna add a bit of salt. Okay, so I've cooked it for about 3 or 4 minutes. It's nice and thick, the consistency that I'd like. I seasoned it, tastes great. Really strong with smoked paprika, but that's good. It'll add a nice zest to the poutine. And we are gonna turn the heat off now. And I'm just gonna let this cool down a little bit before I put it into the dehydrator. Coming along, but you can still see there's a good amount of liquid in the Dutch oven, so I'm just gonna give it a bit of a stir and fire it back in. Okay, so we have a bit of time while we wait for the rice pilaf to finish up in the oven and the gravy to cool down. So I'm just gonna work on something I've been working on for a little bit now, is developing a homemade fish crisp recipe. I'm using red fife flour in this recipe. It's a hearty whole wheat flour. It gives it a nice crisp and a good texture as well, and can sort of replace the cornmeal that would be in regular fish crisp. So I'm gonna do 1 cup of red fife flour. A really good way to get a nice light crisp on your food is cornstarch. So we're gonna do 1 cup of cornstarch. To also help with the crisp, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of baking soda. Okay, well, I'm just gonna do that. There. 2 tablespoons of sea salt. One tablespoon of crushed black pepper. 1 tablespoon of onion powder and 1/2 1/2 tablespoon of garlic powder. That's just for flavor. We're gonna whisk that up. Just gonna check the pilaf now. Okay. Yep. Most of the liquid is gone. That tells me that we're getting really close, so I'm gonna do a taste test now to see if the rice is cooked. It's really hot. Just gonna grab some dehydrator trays. Okay, I'm going to dehydrate the gravy, and I'm going to use these aluminum sheet pans on top of the dehydrator racks. I might not leave them on these trays for the entire time, but this will definitely help keep them from making a mess for the first 6 hours or so until they're more leathery. So I'm going to use these non-stick dehydrator mats that I have, and I'm just going to lay them into the pan. It might make a mess, but I'm going to try not to make a mess. And I'm just going to pour the gravy right in. Try not to overload the trays because they'll take significantly longer. I'm gonna pick the bay leaves and thyme out once they're on the tray. It's gonna be a lot easier. Try not to make a huge mess. Spread it nice and thin. So if you leave lots of space, spread everything out really well, you just get more consistency. I'm gonna set the dehydrator to 135, and I'm gonna set it for 8 hours to start, and I'll check it, break everything up, and see how long it needs to go. I'm gonna check the gravy or the poutine sauce. As soon as the poutine sauce is firm enough to hold, I'm gonna get it out of the sheet pans and put it directly on the mat to try to get it as dry as possible. Just doing a 2-hour in test. Take a look at what's going on in here. Gravy. Still liquidy, but it's definitely working. Not ready to take off the pan yet. Rice is drying out good. Let it go for another couple hours and I'll mix it all up. Okay, we're at the 6-hour mark, and I'm just going to check in on everything. That's the poutine sauce. I'm gonna pop these. Actually, I'm gonna take the trays out. They're kind of hot. These look like they're ready to take off of the. Oh my gosh. Off of the aluminum foil tray or aluminum trays. So we're gonna do that because they're gonna dry a lot faster. But they're not like. They're not going to make a big mess now, so I'm going to lay them flat. Put them back in. This barrier is going to slow down the drying process, so. Pop those back in. Check out the rice pilaf. It's coming along quite nicely. We're just going to flip the rice. I should have maybe stirred it earlier, but I will learn from my mistakes if they are mistakes. We'll see how it turns out in the end, but not going to be able to break it up very easily, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Obviously there's a little bit that still needs to dry, but flipping it will speed up the process. Okay, we'll check in a couple hours. Hey everybody, it's Tyler. It is now Tuesday, so 2 days after we did the recipes in the dehydrator. I'm just going to do a bit of a conclusion to how I packaged the dehydrated meals and how they turned out. So I have the rice pilaf here, and it is bone dry. It was about 8 hours in the dehydrator. I did flip it about, I guess, 2/3 of the way through. And yeah, it's real dry. I didn't break it up maybe as much as I wanted to as it was drying, but I've been able to break it up pretty well at this stage. Any big clumps really is just going to slow down the rehydrating stage. It might cause like some pieces of your meal to not be fully rehydrated. So it is good to try to turn it as it's dehydrating. Something I've got to get a bit better at, obviously. But it's not too bad. So I figure I dehydrated about 8 portions of rice. So the way I'm going to package it up is I'm going to take a total weight using a scale. So I'm going to tear the bowl, pour the rice in, and that is 500 grams. So we're going to take 500 grams and divide it by 8, and then that's how much we'll know will be in each portion. So that's about 60 grams per portion. So I'm just going to put a smaller bowl on here, tear it, and then portion about 60 grams. I'm just going to portion them into a small sandwich Ziploc bag, and then I'm going to put all the portions into a larger Ziploc bag. So last year I was vacuum sealing a lot of my dehydrated meals, and a lot of the bags kind of puncture open from the sharp piece of rice or pasta or the sharp piece of chicken or whatever you're dehydrating. And once they puncture open and they sit, they kind of go bad. So I'm gonna try putting them in Ziploc bags this year, and then putting them in a larger Ziploc bag, and hopefully they stay more airtight. I'm not sure that they need to stay incredibly airtight, as long as they don't get damp or humid. So do that, and then we'll put them in a larger Ziploc bag. Rice pilaf ready to go. Now we're gonna finish up the poutine sauce, and it's still in the dehydrator here. It actually went for quite a long time, about 36 hours at, what did I say the temp was? 135. And it's quite dry. I wanted to try to blitz it into a powder, and every time I checked it, it seemed like it was pretty well there, but it was still pliable, and sort of like a fruit roll-up, which I didn't want to get it all gummed up once it went into the food processor. I want it to be bone dry, turn into a dust, so that it'll rehydrate really well. So I gave it 36 hours, and now I have this really crumbly gravy or poutine sauce. So I'm gonna put this in the food processor, blitz it up into a powder, see how that goes. I'm not 100% confident it's gonna work, but there's only one way to find out. If there's a little bit of humidity in this still, it'll gum up around the blade, but I think it's gonna work. I'm not 100% sure, but let's see. Smells good. It's gonna be loud. Ready? Thought that was gonna happen. Might have to use the Vitamix. Okay, let's take a look. It's definitely working, so that's good. But it's still pretty coarse. So I'm gonna actually try the blender and see if that works better. I was nervous using the blender at first.
They look like coffee grinds.
Almost. A little coarse. Maybe for your French press. Okay, so I'm actually going to use the Vitamix with the smoothie attachment, because it's going to be the most similar to a like spice grinder or coffee grinder. So I think that'll be the best shot. The blender bottom has a lot bigger surface area, so there's a lot more room for the crumble to get stuck under the blade, at least in my experience, and not get fully powdery. But the blender attachment or the blender style is so much smaller that it kind of gets trapped in the blade and it has to go. So we will give her a try. If I can get it on. One more shot. powdery. That worked really well. Now it's more like espresso grinds. It is clumpy, but it's probably just a little bit of humidity that's left in it that's sort of sticking together. It's actually fully powdered, so that'll just work itself out when you start rehydrating. So the way I'm going to measure this out for portions is, I know I had about 6 cups of gravy before I started, and I want to portion it to make 1 cup of gravy per portion. If we're gonna go with the family, you can grab 2 bags. 500 mils of gravy is more than enough to do 4 people worth of poutine. But if I'm going on solo, I'll probably just need about a cup, so if that. So for portioning this, I'm going to first tear the bowl. These are the same bowls, so I'm just gonna tear this bowl, and then that'll tell me the total weight, 160 grams. I'm gonna divide that by 6. So that's roughly 26 grams per portion. So I'm just going to start weighing it out and put it in the Ziploc bag. On the Ziploc bag, I'm going to put the reheat instructions, or the rehydration instructions. I'm just going to start with adding 1 cup of water to the powder and see sort of where that gets you. Let me put that right on the bag. That's 1 cup of gravy. For the rice pilaf, I should have weighed it before I dehydrated it, so I don't really have a clue of how much water it's going to take to rehydrate. So I'm just going to have to like experiment with the first one that I take out, and then come back and document it, and then use that for the rest of them. Kind of forgot, but that's okay. All the meals are packaged up and ready to take it into the backcountry. I'm very excited to test them out and take some notes, make some changes if necessary. I really want to get a freeze dryer down the road, so that's something I'll definitely be working towards. And I'm going to be doing a lot more dehydrated meals, so comment below if there's any that you want to see me try out. And thanks for watching.